This man has hacked your brain many times, and you don't even know his name. It all started early in his career when he worked as a psychotherapist helping children with autism. Through this work, he learned how to understand children who couldn't clearly speak or openly express what they wanted. He learned how to read their minds to understand their desires, needs, and motivations without words. When he realized he had developed this extraordinary ability, he decided to apply his methods to marketing and business. Meet Clotaire Rapaille, the marketer who sparked a revolution across dozens of industries. The owners of the world's largest businesses were willing to pay him millions for a short conversation or a private consultation, all because he learned how to uncover what people truly want, in what form, and exactly how to draw them to a product or service. Sometimes, during meetings, he would say just one word, and that single word became the key to influencing consumers' minds, generating billions of dollars for companies. His secret is simple. He doesn't listen to what people say. He understands what they actually want. Entire industries, from cars and airplanes to luxury cosmetics, coffee, and tobacco, look the way they do today, largely because of Clotaire Rapaille and his radical approach. In this video, we'll break down the strategy he developed, how it influences millions of people again and again, why so many of us fall for it, and why we are far less protected from these methods than we think. All of Rapaille's theories and methods begin with one thing: the brain. Because it's the brain that makes all our decisions, including what we buy. But it's not as simple as it sounds. In his talks, Rapaille often explains that the human brain is made up of three systems: the reptilian brain, the limbic system, and the cortex. And this is where his real insight begins. He discovered something counterintuitive about how these systems actually work. Let's start with the reptilian brain, the oldest and most primitive part, hardwired into us from birth. At its core, it has only two goals: survival and reproduction. In that sense, we are no different from our ancestors or other mammals. But the human brain didn't stop there. We also have the limbic system, the part responsible for emotions, feelings, and motivation. A mother gives her child love, care, and attention, and over time, these experiences become part of our emotional programming. This is how we learn what safety, pleasure, fear, and attachment feel like. And still, that's not the whole picture. Humans also have the cortex, the system responsible for logic and rational thought. It allows us to analyze, compare, calculate, create plans, and think abstractly. While our reptilian and limbic brains are remarkably similar to those of other animals, the cortex is what truly separates humans from the rest. And now we can return to Rapaille's magic, the man who claimed he found the code to the human brain. For decades, entrepreneurs and marketers tried to speak directly to the cortex by presenting facts, features, and specifications. Ads explained how thick paper towels were, how long they lasted, and listed technical details. The same approach was used for cars and countless other products. All of these messages were aimed at our rational brain. But Rapaille was one of the first to argue that rational thinking does not drive sales. He claimed that our smart, logical brain rarely makes purchasing decisions at all. It serves completely different functions. Later, other experts suggested that marketing should focus on emotions, since people are emotional and often make impulsive decisions based on how they feel. That's why television advertising became obsessed with emotions: love, joy, happiness, tears, laughter. Marketers grew fixated on provoking emotional reactions. But Rapaille challenged this idea as well. He argued that human emotions are extremely unstable and can change from moment to moment. Love can quickly turn into hate, excitement into disgust. More importantly, Rapaille pointed out something unsettling. People can genuinely love a brand and still never buy anything from it. So the real question emerges: what should marketers target? Which part of the brain actually controls purchasing decisions? And how did Rapaille manage to hack it? To answer that question, we need to look at the work Rapaille did in the late 1990s and early 2000s within the SUV and off-road vehicle market. At the time, nearly all marketers were moving in the same direction. Advertising for major car brands was filled with words like comfort, safety, family, convenience, and technology, appealing to logic and emotion. But this approach led to a serious collapse in sales. New models failed to stand out or sell, and executives at major car companies were furious. That's when Rapaille stepped into the spotlight. He rejected the conventional approach and made a radical claim: SUVs should not be perceived as cars, but as weapons. According to Rapaille, buying such a vehicle sends a clear message: don't mess with me. I will crush you. I dominate you. Rapaille explained that during interviews, people often said they wanted large SUVs for off-road driving, even if they lived in downtown Manhattan and rarely left the city. Rapaille didn't believe them. He argued that people constantly rationalize their choices and talk nonsense about their true motivations. Unlike other marketers, Rapaille began speaking directly to the reptilian brain. He used the language of primates, simple, instinctive signals. This vehicle helps you survive and dominate. No specifications, no emotional storytelling, just one message: safety and dominance. And he was right. His ideas hit the target with precision and triggered a revolution in the auto industry. SUVs became larger, more aggressive, and more powerful. Manufacturers gradually shifted their focus toward the reptilian brain. In 2002, the Hummer H2 entered the market, and it became a sensation. The vehicle looked dangerous, loud, and aggressive. It was a statement: don't mess with the owner. He can run you over. Rapaille once joked that if you mounted a machine gun on the vehicle, sales would increase even more because, he argued, people crave safety and dominance. Give them power, control, and superiority. This idea was reinforced after September 11th. Following the terrorist attacks, SUV sales in the United States rose by more than 20%. People felt vulnerable and unsafe and sought an illusion of protection and control. The SUV became the perfect tool for that. Using a similar approach, Rapaille went on to transform the aviation industry. For years, aircraft manufacturers struggled to understand how airplane design could make passengers feel calmer and more comfortable. Boeing was familiar with Rapaille's work in the auto industry and brought him in as a consultant during the development of the Boeing 787. As usual, he began by listening to interview participants. Passengers asked for more legroom, less noise, and better service. And as expected, Rapaille dismissed these answers. Once again, he returned to the reptilian brain. On a logical level, flying is simply transportation. But on a reptilian level, flying means leaving the ground, something subconsciously associated with danger and death. Rapaille realized that for passengers to feel calm, an airplane should not feel like a bus with wings. It needed to offer both a sense of connection to the sky and a feeling of control and safety. Before Rapaille, airplanes were designed like sealed aluminum tubes. Small windows and low ceilings created claustrophobia, subconsciously resembling a coffin. Rapaille decided to change that. He proposed much larger windows, positioned so the horizon would be visible from almost anywhere in the cabin, even from the center aisle. When the reptilian brain sees the horizon, it understands where up and down are, and that sense of spatial orientation reduces fear. He also suggested redesigning the plane's entrance to feel more like a hotel lobby than a utility door. The high ceilings at the entrance of the 787 immediately create a feeling of air and openness, reducing anxiety from the very first moment on board. In addition, the aircraft introduced dynamic lighting, known as the sky interior, using LEDs that simulate sunrise, sunset, and blue skies. This mimics natural cycles and reassures the subconscious that you're still connected to nature, not trapped inside a metal container. As a result, the Boeing 787 became one of the first commercial aircraft designed around psychological safety and a sense of control. After early flights, many passengers reported that it felt easier to breathe and more comfortable without being able to explain why. The 787 didn't just succeed, it set a new standard that other manufacturers soon began to copy. Rapaille explains it simply: the reptile always wins. Emotions are extensions of survival instincts. The cortex is merely an intellectual alibi, a story we tell ourselves to justify a decision that has already been made. The reptile is in charge. Which leads to an even bigger question. How does Rapaille know which instincts to trigger? Where does he find them? And how exactly does this brain hack work? Most marketers rely on interviews, focus groups, market analysis, and competitor research. Rapaille didn't invent anything new here. He changed the approach. He uses a method he calls deep immersion sessions and imprint discovery. Let's look at a real case. Rapaille brings together a focus group. At first, nothing seems unusual. The real magic happens later. He believes that to hack the brain, you need only one thing: the right word, a code that unlocks the subconscious. If you find the correct code, people stop thinking and start buying, obsessively. First, he asks basic questions. What do you associate with coffee? What words come to mind? These answers don't interest him. They come from logic. Next, he begins asking bizarre questions like, how would you feel about coffee if you were a 6-year-old alien? People get confused, laugh nervously, and their rational brain shuts down. Imagination turns on. Strange memories begin to surface. Exactly what Rapaille is looking for. Then comes the final stage. Participants are unexpectedly taken out of the room. When they return, they are asked to sit on the floor. The lights are dimmed. The atmosphere becomes informal, calm, and safe. Rapaille says that in moments like these, people's mood, mental state, and even their breathing patterns change. At this point, Rapaille tries to reach people's earliest memories, their very first associations with the product. He is attempting to access the most important layer, the unconscious. He asks the group to remember what coffee meant to them in early childhood, how they felt about it, their first encounters with it, and their earliest memories. Rapaille says that during these sessions, people sometimes recall emotions from 30 or even 40 years ago. Memories that have been buried deep for decades suddenly rise to the surface. This is the core secret of his process. Early memories, first impressions, associations, and images are the keys to the brain. They allow direct access to the consumer's unconscious and quietly push them toward a purchase. In one such session, Rapaille discovered something striking. For most people, coffee is associated with home. Childhood images repeatedly appeared. Mornings, kitchens, parents and grandparents drinking freshly brewed coffee, and most importantly, a feeling of safety. From early childhood, an invisible connection had formed. Coffee equals safety, calmness, and the comfort of home. Rapaille summed it up in one sentence: coffee is not a drink. Coffee is home. Another major discovery was that for most people, coffee doesn't enter the subconscious through taste, as previously assumed, but through aroma. Coffee reaches the brain through the nose, not the taste buds. Rapaille concluded that aroma and the feeling of home are reptilian anchors of safety. Together, they create calmness, comfort, and protection. This is exactly what Rapaille began to target, filling advertisements with images of sunny mornings, warmth, and coziness, and trying to transmit the smell of coffee through the screen. Rapaille realized something crucial. Coffee doesn't hook us through taste or features, but through smell and the feeling of home, safety, and a morning ritual, once again revealing our most basic instinct, to survive and reproduce. By repeating this work across industries, Rapaille discovered key words for different markets and niches. He linked SUVs with domination, chocolate with reward and pleasure, coffee with home and aroma, and alcohol with freedom and breaking boundaries. In the early 2000s, Rapaille sparked another revolution in the auto industry. He noticed that American men were subconsciously drawn to the image of the mafioso, a figure of power, control, and danger. Once again, these desires were rooted in basic reptilian instincts. At that time, the theme of the Italian mafia was especially popular and highly romanticized. Rapaille realized that if he designed a car associated with the Italian mafia, it would be a hit. That's how he helped create the Chrysler PT Cruiser, later nicknamed the Al Capone car, because its design echoed gangster cars of the 1930s. This was more than just a car. It was a symbol of power and dominance. Unsurprisingly, the PT Cruiser became a huge success. It was revolutionary, and soon copycats flooded the market. Clotaire Rapaille didn't just sell cars and coffee. He showed us how primitive we really are. We modern humans like to think we are the pinnacle of creation, the final stage of evolution, hyper-rational thinking beings. We believe we make balanced, logical decisions and that we control our lives. But the truth is, 90% of the time in the driver's seat of our consciousness is an ancient, frightened reptile. Look around you right now. Look at your phone, the sneakers you're wearing, the car you dream of. Your cortex, your smart brain, will instantly come up with 100 logical reasons why you need it. It's reliable, it's practical, it's high quality, or it's beautiful. But now you know the truth. You didn't buy a phone, you bought belonging and protection. You didn't buy a car, you bought a weapon and armor. You didn't buy coffee, you bought the illusion that you are home and safe. Rapaille simply found the keys to doors we were afraid to open. He stopped listening to our words and gave us what our instincts silently demanded. And now that you understand this mechanism, I have only one question for you. The next time your hand reaches for your card to pay for something, ask yourself, Who is really making this decision, you or your ancient reptilian brain?